Today, we look at the 5 different keyboard actions and why you might be looking at the wrong product. Stay with us. Hi, Patrick Marr with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our other YouTube channels as well as this one. Watch our other videos, leave us some comments, like our videos. We really love to interact with you guys. And today, I'm very excited. We have a lot of action to bring to you. Cheesy joke, I'm sorry. But it can be really confusing and kind of boring to read about the different piano actions and keyboards and say, hey, I really know what I'm getting here, and I know this is the right product for my kid or for me or for a gift. And it's really confusing, so we wanted to bring a pretty short video. I hope we keep it pretty short for you guys, but of those different actions and highlighting exactly what are the differences and why or why not the product you're looking at could or could not be the right keyboard for you. So I'm going to start with the least expensive option. It's what a lot of people think they're getting into when they say, I want my kid to take piano lessons or keyboard lessons, or if you're an adult and you're like, I want to get into this. A lot of the times people look immediately the lowest price thing, and it makes sense. They're like, what do I really need to spend to get up and going? And so we're going to look at spring-loaded keyboard actions first. Sometimes it's referred to as the Synth action, and that's because on a lot of traditional synthesizers, shout out to our other YouTube channel, we have a synthesizer one. If you're into synthesizers, our audio channel on Alamo Music, you can check that out. But a lot of those actions are going to have synth-weighted key beds, and a lot of the beginner $60 to $200 to $300 keyboards are also going to have that synth spring-loaded action. So I have one here with me today. This is called a Casio. It's an SA76. The easiest way to tell is if you look underneath the keys here, you'll see that there's an indentation. I can run my finger actually underneath all those. These are real small keys. They can be full-size keys, like bigger, like you're more used to on a piano, and they can still have this spring action. And that spring action is very bouncy. It's almost like an on-off switch. And so a lot of times they'll have velocity reading on these, on the expensive ones. So if you hit it harder, it's going to be louder. If you hit it softer, it's going to be quieter. But really kind of just an on-off switch. And it's a really good present for a 2-year-old or for a kid. Or if you're someone who needs to have music on the go, if you are in a band and you need, if you're on road trips or on tour, having something where you can be like, oh, this is an F, this is a C, having something that's kind of fun to mess around with, it can be a nice tool for you. But again, I would really, if you're getting your kids involved a little bit later, 7 or 8 years old, you'll probably hear from the teacher, make sure you go after a weighted keyboard or go after a hammer action. You'll start hearing these different terms used. So spring-loaded is that most reasonably priced. A lot of the times people will buy this as their first instrument. And a lot of the times, honestly, if you check your local Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, you'll see a lot of these for free for $5, $10, $50. And it's because a lot of the times people buy these instruments and they don't stick with it, or it goes in a closet for 10 years. It's kind of sad because it's, to me, I always use the comparison of if you want your kid to play golf or play a sport and you buy them plastic clubs, it's fun when they're 2 years old, 3 years old to like swing the plastic clubs. You're not going to hurt anybody, but it will only get you so far in progressing. And it's hard to make that assessment of, oh, they're not going to be a golfer because they don't like using these plastic clubs. It's not fun. It's not fun for them. And so I use that analogy just because if your kid is very young and you don't want to spend a lot of money, that's completely okay. But just know it is something that's, I would say, a stopgap for a lot of people. That spring action keyboard, synth loaded. And then some people, like further in life, when they like the synthesizers and having those everywhere, it's about having something lightweight that they can gig with or they can move in their studio. And those synth keys are really a nice thing for them. So that is the synth and the spring-loaded keyboard. Next, you have unweighted keys. Actually, sorry, you have semi-weighted. So the unweighted would be like the spring action. So then you have semi-weighted keys. And semi-weighted keys are actually have an interesting story. They were seen first in organs, like a Hammond organ. And so a lot of the times you will not see semi-weighted as an option in keyboards. I know it sounds like a nice in-between between spring and weighted, but it's actually kind of a separate genre in itself. It's going to be on some high-end Nord organ simulators and some old synthesizers as well that are organ simulators. And what the semi-weighted means is basically you press the keys. They press down really kind of just effortlessly. It's a light action, and then it like springs up immediately. So it's got to wait to like bring it back up to your fingers as fast as possible. And that's just so that you can have very rapid playing, like on an organ. And just, yeah, it's one of those things you don't see on a lot of pianos, but sometimes when you do see them, they're very expensive, and it doesn't make sense. It's like, wait, we went from semi-weighted, but I need weighted. And it can be confusing. So just wanted to go over semi-weighted as something that you probably want to avoid if you're watching this video. If you're trying to figure out the different action for you, that probably is not the right one. Which brings us to our third one, weighted action. Weighted action is the top requested thing by 99% of all piano teachers out there. They say, hey, if you're going to be investing in lessons, you're going to be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars every year on lessons, you need to have an instrument that can keep up with you and that can strengthen your hands. And so a weighted piano is going to have shorter keys than some of the other actions we're about to talk about here in a minute. I have an action here that will kind of show you guys, and this is called the responsive hammer action. So hammer action we're going to be talking about in a second, but on a weighted action you'll see something very similar to this, a shorter key with a fulcrum point early on. So if you think of a seesaw and equal components on each side bouncing, where that fulcrum is very important to how it feels. And so the shorter the key, the more early on they have to put the fulcrum. And on some of the straight weighted keys, they'll put the fulcrum actually at the end of the key to kind of counterbalance that. Some of the issues with just a weighted keyboard are going to be if the weight is on the very end of the key, when you press it, there's not a lot of counterweight back. And so counterweight is something that you feel on a full acoustic piano. You feel the hammers go up, you feel them come down, and there's actually some levers involved with that action. And so you don't really get that full simulated feel, of course, because it's a lot smaller of a key. When you move to a piano, you get a lot longer keys with farther fulcrum points where the buttons are in the key action. But on a weighted keyboard, you can see them starting off from anywhere about $350 going up to really $1,500, $2,000. You can spend a lot of money on a weighted keyboard. And right when I was doing some research for this video, I already have seen a lot of the marketing shift from the narrative of just weighted to you get graded weighted hammers, which is like it simulates an acoustic instrument. So on an acoustic piano, the lower left section, the bass section of the piano, has heavier hammers. So the heavier hammers have to strike that bass string, which is a thicker string. So it's going to be a heavier feel in your left hand. And as you move up the keyboard, the hammers actually get lighter. And they get lighter because they're smaller strings that they're striking. Sometimes the strings turn into 2s and 3s. So there's a unison string in the bass side that's a real fat string. As you move up, so the volume doesn't completely decrease, they actually add more strings. So there will be 3 strings that you're striking in the very top right hand. So recently in marketing, you see the differences start to trickle down, and technology is catching up, and they're able to offer some of these really affordable actions in a lower price point. And so it kind of bleeds over. Whereas before you had fully weighted actions and you had hammer actions, they're kind of starting to bleed over. And so you see in a lot of these low-priced actions or keyboards, you'll see hammer actions. And so like I showed you here in this responsive hammer action, this a couple years ago with the short key like this would have just been considered a fully weighted keyboard or fully weighted action. And so the weighted actions have progressed. They've been able to mimic and put a hammer in there so that does get that simulation of a hammer striking in a shorter distance. But really when you move up, you start getting what I refer to as almost like a hybrid hammer action. And I brought some examples of that today just because that's when you start getting in the multi-$1,000s for an instrument. And you'll see the different upgrades. So we've gone over the synth and the spring-loaded action. We've gone over the semi-weighted, which I would kind of avoid if you're a beginner. We've gone over the weighted action. And now we're going to be going into the hammer action and that kind of hybrid that it's been going into. So this is a hybrid action here. And so this is a full-length key. Not full length, so it's as full length as a digital piano is going to get. A grand piano and an upright piano are going to be just a little bit longer, with there being actually a size difference in a grand piano and an upright piano. So you can see very long key. On keyboards, you're used to just seeing the bottom key part here, and we can hold up what we saw here in the spring-loaded. So you can see how big of a difference there is in keys from something that's under $100 to something that's going to be over a couple $1,000s. And you can see just how complex they can make one note that you're pressing that to the untrained ear or untrained player will be like, oh, it's just an on-off. There's so many micro nuances here, and there's 3 sensors on some of these high-end hybrid hammer actions. And it's actually mimicking a hammer hitting. So when you press down in the response, it's actually the fulcrum's all the way down here. So we had seen that on some of the other ones where the fulcrum has to be closer to the front because the key's shorter, and that seesaw again is a lot smaller and you have a lot less control. If you think about a tool you're using, the longer pivot point you have, the more nuances, the more strength, the more responsive you can make it. And with music, that's something so dynamic, it's very important to know the full dynamic range that you have. And a lot of the times why a teacher will say you need this one or you need that one, it can be very complex. And so I actually consider this the real hammer action. So I would be very, very cautious when you're looking at weighted action versus hammer action. You'll see some keyboards, the P45, the P125 from Yamaha, the DGX 660 from Yamaha. These all have a hammer action, they say, but it's really more of an upgraded weighted action. So it does have some really nice feel to it, but it's nowhere near, say, the Yamaha Clavinova line, which is kind of what I consider that hammer action. It's going to have graded, of course. It's going to be heavier in the bottom. As it goes up to the top, it's going to be a little bit lighter. But that weighted hammer action is just a very much more complex. The CA series from Kawai also has this. So just a really more articulate key bed and articulate action. They also start making them with wood. And so as you saw on the one I just picked up versus the one before it, so this is what I kind of consider a hammer action, where it's a longer key, you have a longer fulcrum, also made out of wood, like a real acoustic piano. On the ones that they still use the verbiage of hammer, but a lot of the times they'll make the keys out of plastic, just from affordability. Something like this you can expect in a sub $1,000 keyboard. Something with the wood keys you can expect in at least a $2,000 to $3,000 digital piano. And so that's the big difference there. And so that's the 4. The 5th one, I do want to make it about the hybrid instruments that are coming out today. So hybrid technology really kind of takes the best of digital and the best of acoustic and blends them together. So the hybrid actions that we do see today are going to be on, say, a Yamaha NU1X or an N3X or a Kawai NV10 or NV5. These are the very top tier digital pianos that you can buy. Very, very expensive, but very amazing in their technologies. They have full built-out action. So like I said, instead of on the hammer action where it's a long key that's almost as long as a piano, they actually have piano keys in it, and they have a full working action, both a grand size and an upright size. Very amazing technology. We've done some videos on those. I recommend you check them out if you are looking for the best digital piano that you can buy. That is an amazing, amazing accomplishment, those hybrid instruments. Again, Yamaha makes the NU1X, Kawai makes the NV5 and the NV10. Just incredible. They're completely digital. The sounds, you can put headphones on. You can be anywhere in an apartment, in a musical studio, pretty much anywhere anywhere you want to be, and still have that full weighted action that feels like an acoustic piano. So those were the 5 today that we wanted to go over. Again, you have the spring-loaded, the synth action. It's going to be your most affordable option. You have the semi-weighted, which is going to be a lot like an organ of past times, so like a Hammond or a simulator like the Nord keyboards that do come out now that are replicating those old organs. It's a semi-weighted. You have the fully weighted, which is just differentiating fully weighted from the semi-weighted, and that's going to be a lot of your mid-range. It's going to be P45s, P125s. I really group some of these hammer technologies into that weighted category. Then you're going to have the hammer action, which I really kind of start saying that Clavinova line from Yamaha, the CA series from Kawai, really a lot more nuances and balance in those keys. And then you're gonna have the hybrid, which is true to the original, true to the acoustic piano. And so those are your 5 levels. I hope this helped. Please let us know if you need anything. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. You can give us a call. We're here in San Antonio, Texas. We love to help out and help clear the air about some of these confusing terms. Thank you guys for watching.